YouTube! Kinsey and Elisheva here at the Flocking Farm. Today, let's talk about challah. Challah is a braided bread that we would make every single Shabbat dinner when I was a kid. And over the many years that my mom made challah for us, she developed a strategy that always yielded, without fail, perfect challah every time. Challah is a braided bread that's very often found in Jewish culture typically, which is why we started really getting into challah as we were celebrating Shabbat. Now, a lot of people look at it and say challah. It's technically challah. But I have two secrets to get the best challah every time. Well, one's really the big secret and the other is the bonus secret. So if you really want to know how to make this beautiful braided bread, stick around. Before we really get going in today's video, would you be terribly opposed to hitting that subscribe button? It would mean a lot to us. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Let's talk ingredients. I would recommend pausing the screen here to take a look at everything that you need. We're going to start by mixing together the 1/2 cup of sugar, 1.5 cups of lukewarm water, and 4.5 teaspoons of yeast together in our stand mixer with the dough hook. Now, if you don't have a stand mixer, that's fine. You can continue to mix all of this by hand. It's just going to take a little bit more to incorporate everything together. We then add in 3 cups of our flour to start with. I mix this at a low speed. My mixer goes to 10 and I mix it at about 2 until everything is fully combined. Once I reach the consistency I'm looking for, I then add in my 1/2 cup of olive oil and 2 large eggs. Now, this is my bonus secret. I love baking with duck eggs. Because duck eggs are fattier than chicken eggs and contain more protein, I find that it makes for richer baked goods. So that's my pro tip number 1. Once my eggs are incorporated in, all the yolk is broken, I will then add in my 2 teaspoons of salt. I now start adding in my flour a 1/2 cup at a time. There is quite a bit of variation in the amount of flour just based on how the dough is doing that day, so that's why there's not a specific amount. I will keep adding it until it forms a ball in the middle, like you'll see here in a moment. I do find, however, that my stand mixer has a hard time just because this dough is a stiff dough. So you would let it mix for 6 minutes, but I usually let mine mix for 4 minutes and then I will hand knead for another 5 minutes. If you're kneading just by hand, 10 minutes minimum. And Elisheva decided to join us for a minute. Now, here is the big secret and where our recipe varies from most that you'll find. Instead of letting the dough rise in bulk, I pre-portion each one of the strands out before the rising process begins. And this is something that my mom found out over baking challah for many years, is if you let each of the individual strands rise instead of the bulk mass of the dough, you end up with fluffier, more delicious challah every single time. You're going to need a total of 12 balls because this recipe makes 2 loaves of challah, and each loaf of challah takes 6 strands. Each one of these balls will be an individual strand. So with these, I measured the bulk of the dough and then I did a little math to figure out how big these needed to be even. So they're about 4.5 ounces based on the dough that I have today. And then I knead these and pull them to be pretty, cover them in plastic and let them sit in a warm place and let them rise for 1 hour. Then we're going to take these back and roll them out into our strands. Now, because of my oven situation, I put one of these next to the stove and let it rise in the warmth, and I keep the other one where it's relatively cold so that my dough does not overrise. But if you're not baking in a teeny tiny oven and having to kind of juggle which one gets baked at what point in time, and you put your loaves into a large oven at the same time, you don't have to worry about that. But that's why you won't see me working both of the doughs at the same time. Now I take each one of these balls and start rolling them out into a strand and put them together. I want these relatively even because this is going to determine how long I can have my challah braid. If most of these are even, I'm going to be able to have a continuous braid. It takes a little bit of manipulating it, but once you have it, you pinch the tops together. I then grab one of the ends and fold it over to the other side, and then this end and fold it back over to the other side. Whichever end is on top, this is going to be the first one that we start using. Now notice here, it's easiest for me to remember if I have two sections on each side and I'm folding over to the middle. So I've grabbed my upper one and folded it over to one side. Then you grab a strand to replace that one and put it back up top. Grab, fold down, grab another one and fold it back up. So you're always replacing the strand that you brought down, and you're using the strand every time that's on the upper portion. Down and up. Down again and replace up again, and you continue to do that until you have a fully braided loaf of bread. Then once you get close to the end, you pinch these into the bottom and shape your dough. Play with it a little bit until you get what you like. Then you take your beautifully braided challah and put it back underneath the plastic wrap, and we're going to let these rise for a second time for an additional 20 minutes. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. And we're gonna go ahead and take that third egg and whip it up here. Take a nice little brush and we're gonna do an egg wash on the challah after it's done with its second rise. I usually like to go over in a couple of thin coats to make sure I get this perfectly and evenly coated. Now, it's not necessary to put this on parchment paper. The reason I have it on parchment paper here is because my oven was dirty and I didn't feel like cleaning it, but I've never had a problem with my challah sticking. Then you're gonna bake it between 20 and 25 minutes depending on your oven. You're looking for a golden brown color. I usually like to flip my challah half of the way through so that I get an even beautiful golden bake on both sides. And voila, beautiful golden brown challah. Now how you braid it really determines how it's gonna come out. You'll notice one end of mine is a little bigger than the other just based on how tightly I braided it, but it's beautiful, light and fluffy, delicious challah. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Flocking Farm. You could have been anywhere and you chose to spend some time with us. We really appreciate it. Would it be too much to ask for you to leave a comment down below, giving us a little bit of feedback on this video? Let us know if you have any questions about challah, about Shabbat, and anything else that you would like to hear from us as we bring you along our homesteading journey. Until next time, don't be afraid to live out loud, and we'll catch you on that flippity flop.